Kathy an opportunity to answer those. This is an academic institution, which means that people should be courteous, they should be respectful. You do not interrupt when someone else is speaking. People should feel free to express their views as they wish, without fear or favor, and with only deadly fear of contradiction. Okay, and please try. We think that we don't have a huge amount of time, so keep your comments to brief as possible. Let's say 2 minutes. And what can help is think about what you want to say before you actually speak. And with that, I think I've covered everything, except whatever. Okay, so we'll open up the floor. Alex, do you want to say that anyway?
Yeah,
Who else?
Medea got me thinking, and I'd like to share a paradigm, a powerful paradigm that could counter the military-industrial complex, and that is the medical industrial complex. We're sitting in the middle of the medical mecca here in New York. Back in '98 in Texas, Waco, Texas, David Koresh had this polygamist community. They had arms, and Janet Reno called out the state police, the Texas Rangers, the military. It was a military buildup around this 150 people. 60 days they held out. 60 days blaring in music, rock and roll, trying to get these people to the breakdown. Day 62, someone shot, a gun went off. Before you know it, almost the whole compound was dead with the fire. Destruction. What if Janet Reno would have called off all of the military, the police, and called in medical, nurses, psychologists, social workers? I mean, David Koresh and his people were not going to shoot anybody. Now, my point is this. What is the universal movement that no country is exempt from? And that is fighting cancer. So the paradigm shift would be, rather than a military industrial complex, we get into action the medical industrial complex. Because I think service and health and education far outweighs whatever weaponry people feel secure about. Thanks.
Back here. Yeah.
Ms. Kathy, can we come visit you in prison?
Let me do one more, right here.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I had a question for Kathy. You mentioned that we're in a time crunch concerning like the impact that war is having on the planet. Do you know if there's any evidence or research being gathered to show the long-term impacts of war on agriculture in war zones?
Wow. Other than like exploded bombs into the garden.
Yeah. Well, to just dive in,
Yes.
the Bureau of Prisons will assign me some place to be, and I'm to turn myself in on January 23rd. So I only know that I'll probably be in a top bunk somewhere. I did serve a year in maximum security prison, and another 3-month sentence in a minimum security prison. So Baruch has bought you an ex-con who never pays her taxes. I don't know if you can accept that, but when I said I find refuge in being in this group with so much diversity, to be honest, in some ways, I so much don't want to in any way collaborate with the menacing and threatening and wrong-headed system of war that's predominant in our country today, that has scooped up so much of the resources, the energy, the ingenuity, and put it at the service of militarism, that if putting me behind bars can say, this is one way to say, okay, you're not part of it, lock me up. So please don't worry for me, but thank you for the willingness to come and visit. Generally, one can assemble a visiting list after you've been in for a week or so and submit that, and then if it's approved, then you can have visitors. But, I think we should never let government or wars sever the bonds that exist between us, and I'll certainly feel connected to people. Thank you very much for that question. The researcher whom I think has done some of the best work is a man named Alfred McCoy. He's still teaching at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And he showed how the Vietnam War had so desecrated the land of Vietnam, and then calculated what would be required to rehabilitate the agricultural infrastructure in Vietnam. Now, I can't help, well, I called him and I said, so can you get that number crunching going for Afghanistan? And he said he was sure that there were ample numbers of people who had been sent to Afghanistan to do various kinds of non-governmental organizational work who probably have been working on that. But the reality is in Afghanistan that along with the ways in which war has decimated, torn apart families and heightened the desperation, there's also the reality that Afghanistan is now providing 80% of the world's opium and is the largest exporter of the world's of marijuana in the world today. So it's a very, very complex and difficult problem to imagine how farmers could once again grow crops other than opium, and how the flocks could once again start to crisscross the country, and how the irrigation system could be cleaned out. One estimate is that it would cost about $40 billion. And I recognize in our economy today that's a huge sum of money. But while the United States was at war in Afghanistan, full tilt after the surge, the cost of the war every week was $2 billion. So 20 weeks of the war could have bankrolled the rehabilitation of the agricultural infrastructure within the whole country. Even up to this point, the cost to keep one U.S. soldier in Afghanistan for 1 year is $2.1 billion. No, sorry, $2.1 million. To keep one soldier there for 1 year, $2.1 million. I could just add that there are now 500,000 children in Afghanistan suffering from severe acute malnourishment. You never recover from that. With that comes the likelihood of chronic brain deficiency. The good news, in a sense, would be that the cost to offset chronic brain deficiency in any child suffering from malnutrition such that the child would be severely malnourished would be 5 cents per child per year to get iodine into the child's diet. Let's see Lady Justice. What do you think the average person in the United States would rather contribute to? $2.1 million to keep one soldier in Afghanistan for 1 year. 22 combat veterans every single day commit suicide in the United States. How many of those soldiers come back themselves maimed, wounded, debilitated psychologically? Or would we spend 5 cents to get iodized salt into the diet of a child? May we not put these questions before the U.S. public? May we not read about that every day in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, in the papers of record, in the Washington Post? And the answer is no. You will not find out about those choices. And that's why we're undereducated. Sure, we need literacy in Afghanistan amongst the women. It would solve a host of problems. But we need literacy in this country amongst ourselves so that we become literate about the stories of the lives of the people so trapped, so burdened by our wars. And for going to another country and sitting next to people and listening to their stories about how they're burdened and how they're trapped by our wars, the consequence, because we want to talk with the commander of people waging war against those people, is that I'll go into a prison and sit next to people who'll tell me on oaths about being trapped and burdened by the war against the poor in this country.
So I just want to ask where the sign-up sheets ended up. Did anybody see them? And is there anybody here who hasn't had a chance to sign up? Could you raise your hand? So maybe some around the front here, if we could pass it
Kathy,
around.
Kathy, he's a doctor, and he has two twins, so he wants to escape the Judaism.
I'm so sorry for saying that. It's a doctor and he has two kids.
Two twins, he's
Oh,
just got twins.
wow.
So he wants to leave all the work to his wife and go to
Well, I wanted to just respond to the question about the military, the medical industrial complex. And I think certainly Kathy's addressed it in the kinds of things that we could be spending our money on. But I'm going in a couple of weeks to Cuba, where the where the Obama administration has done another positive thing, which is just announced a thawing of relations after 54 years with our neighboring country, where it's been illegal for us to go there and visit. And one of the things he did praise Cuba for was being the first country to send doctors to Africa to fight Ebola, hundreds of doctors. And one of the first meetings we asked for, as we're going to Cuba with 150 people, is to say we want to meet with the medical missions, we want to meet with those doctors, we want to thank those doctors for their service. And I was recently in Iran, and when I was in Iran, we were interviewed in the press and it came out in the media, and somebody came to the hotel where I was staying and said they wanted to meet with me, and it was an Iranian doctor. And he said, we just created a group called Muslim Physicians Without Borders, after the Doctors Without Borders. And he said, we would really like to work with U.S. doctors and show that as healers to healers, we can work together and go to a third country where people are really in need and have these medical missions together. And so far, I have not found the U.S. doctors group who wants to work with those Iranian doctors. So if there's any of you doctors in the room or know of anybody and wants to help me get that going, I think that one of the things that we can do as citizens is model the kinds of things we want our government to do. And so when we have these creative types of diplomatic efforts on the citizen-to-citizen level, we can hope that those things will trickle up.
And please take a brochure for the emergency hospitals that will stitch up anybody. They don't ask any questions. In Iraq and in Afghanistan, I've encountered them. They're also in West Africa. They're pretty amazing. They are the ones who sometimes are the people who know the most about what's going on in a country like Afghanistan, because their ambulances with their logo can travel without any fear of being attacked. They've never had people taken hostage or kidnapped, because they are neutral, and they have a lot that they could teach the U.S. military.
Okay, and I just sort of mentioned, by the way, about agriculture. Agent Orange in Vietnam, there is still land in Vietnam that cannot be used to grow crops. And we're now a fourth generation of people suffering. Now, did you what? Okay. Yeah. Way in the back, down here, and Ashfaq.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a letter from a Birmingham jail confronting the church in regard to segregation. I think it would be important in dealing with what's going on over in the Middle East if Christians would be confronting their clergy, their bishops, their imams, and the rabbis, the people that came out in support of Dr. King in regard to segregation in the South, if those same people would speak out in regard to violence, especially for Christians who have, as the founder of their faith, who taught nonviolent love of friends and enemies, that the clergy should be teaching this and preaching this in their churches. And I think it's important that we protest houses of worship rather as Christians rather than the White House, because the White House is founded on the document, the Constitution, that justifies violence. But for Christians, they have houses of worship, the worship of God, who says, I am love. And I think if we protested our churches, then we would have a moral voice in regard to these issues.
Medea to speak to the changing of the definition of 97% civilian casualty rate with these things. And most of those civilians have been automatically reclassified as insurgents now because they've changed the definition of the word.
I thought,
Both of you, Kathy and Medea, you mentioned about opium trade. How true it is that during the Taliban regime, before the North alliances, where we made alliances with Taliban out, that during that regime, opium was completely eradicated as a drug. How true is that?
I think I could start with that question. It's verifiable, scientifically proven that the Taliban figures did not want the opium trade to continue. They did make a boatload of money because they took what opium did exist and they stored it. And the price for heroin went up so high that they were able to make a huge profit. But they eradicated the opium trade. It does seem to both Medea and me that with drones doing surveillance in Afghanistan 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, collecting surveillance of the roads, they might notice convoys carrying opium in every direction all throughout the country, but we don't see that. In fact, of the
Not on national interest.
of the $104 billion that's been given to Afghanistan since 2001 in non-military aid, when you consult the graph in this, it's called the SIGAR report, the Special Inspector General on Afghanistan report, and John Sopko gives brilliant, scathing critiques, really, of the United States government role. A huge amount of that money was spent on counter-narcotics, but what did they accomplish? So it's hard to know who is complicit with whom, but most of the major drug lords who were identified by the United States and by the Afghan government because of the corruption within Afghanistan have been able to assure that they don't spend time in prison and that they've been able to get out of the country with their money if there's a need to move on. Drug lords and warlords are now controlling not only the apparently 70% of the country, but also the major roads leading into Kabul. This was the case for Hamid Karzai. That's why he appointed at every cabinet level of ministry somebody who was either a drug lord or a warlord. So the young people that we know, they want a far different future, but they're trapped in a society that's been long dominated by people who are firmly committed to war, and I would include amongst those warlords the United States military.
So let me address the other question that Lee had here about the definition of an insurgent or a militant or a terrorist is basically anybody of military, any male of military age in the areas where we are using the drones. Whether it's a place where we're at war or a place we're not at war, like in Pakistan. And so the U.S. will have a drone strike, and immediately you'll hear a report that says that 9 militants were killed. How do we know they were militants? Definition: they were men of military age that were in the place where we're using the drones. And the only way that they can prove that they were militants is after they're dead. And doesn't much matter to prove that afterwards. And that really relates to, I think, the question that the gentleman or the statement you made about where to put the pressure. And I just wanted to read a little excerpt from a man who is the head of a group of black churches. And it's in reference to the drone policy and the militarized response. And he says that we need to correct this policy. Where are the drum majors for justice when it comes to correcting the president on this evil policy? Where are you, Al Sharpton? Where are you, Jesse Jackson? Where are you, John Lewis? Where are members of the Black Caucus, the Catholic bishops, Reverend Jim Wallace of Sojourners? If the church does not speak out against this immoral policy, we will lose our moral voice, our soul, our right to represent and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. So it is very easy, I think, for all of us to condemn things like what happened in France, the killing of cartoonists. But we should take that same moral outrage and use it when our own government is killing innocent people with things like drone strikes.
And maybe we could also add that once every 28 hours, a black man in this country is killed at the hands of either a policeman or somebody in custody, who has the man in custody, or by a vigilante group, once every 28 hours. And so many people wanted to see heads of state gathered in France to show solidarity and to say we won't tolerate Islamic violence or any kind of non-state violence. But what about the violence that's been wreaked upon people like Eric Garner or Michael Brown? You know, what Medea just described, that somebody can be walking along a road and possibly be in the crosshairs of a drone strike, is also true. We find out for people like Eric Garner, who just had loose cigarettes in his pocket and was killed by a chokehold saying, "I can't breathe." So I think it's a very important time to be asking ourselves questions, to kind of look in the mirror and see ourselves ready to acknowledge the violence that's so prevalent in our culture, and then say we won't continue to be subservient to it. We certainly won't exalt and glorify it. We won't presume that because somebody wears a uniform, they automatically deserve our respect and that we should be subservient to their authority. Now that may seem like an odd thing for someone to say who's moving into a situation where I'll be wearing a uniform and it's that of a prisoner, and the people who will dominate my day will tell me what time to get up, what time to go to sleep, where to go to work, where to go to the bathroom. But I think it's a really important time to question authority.
Good. Here and then Farouk. And David, okay.
I'm wondering, there are these organizations like Move On and you mentioned Sojourn and so forth. Is there one that a peace movement could use effectively? I mean, is there one that is doing that already, or is, are these existing ones helping at all?
Farouk.
Yeah, just before I ask a question, you got these samples for the calligraphy, so whenever you have some time, you can just give your name in English. And to ask a question, I watch a program, I usually watch the NBC News at night, and then I watch Democracy Now! How many of you are familiar with that, Democracy Now! Good, there are several of you. And I really love that lady, Amy Goodman. She brings fantastic guests. I was just watching after the Paris massacre, and they had two shows. One was a Lebanese Christian who was a professor in London, who pointed out that how come that when Muslims do anything wrong, it's reprehensible, they always have wall-to-wall coverage. But other people, like he talked about the Norwegian guy who went and killed 72 kids and adults, and then the Baruch Goldstein who went and killed 29 worshippers out maybe 25, 30 years ago. And there was some coverage, but not wall-to-wall like we said today. And then yesterday they had Jeremy Scahill, who was a fantastic author. He's written books like Dirty Wars, which are also supposedly made into a movie, and they might be nominating him for Academy Awards. But he says that those people who were holding hands at the Paris March were all hypocrites. These are his words, not mine. You can just Google Democracy Now! And he said the reason is that in Israel, Netanyahu is trying to kill two journalists himself in the West Bank for questioning his policies. Then there was another man that he came from Gabon, an African country, where I think he was in the front. I'm not sure if it's the same person. But he does not allow any demonstrations in his own country. So here there are all these guys, and he gave examples of even Obama and who's after some journalists. So it's a very
The
catch-22
boss as well,
situation.
is Hamas, is
But,
Abbas as well, he's
yeah, Abbas is a,
as well. I
He was
just want
there,
to bring
you're
that
right.
up, because of, he's entered Hamas in with his coalition.
David?
Well, I'd just like to, and I hope that you will address it too, maybe, is war tax resistance. In 1992 was the last time that I filed income tax, and that was in response to the Desert Storm and shooting and killing of Iraqis. Our pilots, naval pilots, said they were like shooting fish in a barrel. And I just said, well, all right, but it's not going to be on my dime from here on. Someone asked me when I came in, and knows I'm a war tax resistor, only she said, asked me was I still, what's the word? Tax evader. I said, no, I'm not an evader, that's illegal. I don't pay taxes, I'm a war tax resistor. That's illegal too, but I'm part of a network. And I know Code Pink a few years ago, we were in cahoots with, you were in cahoots with Newtrack, and we're trying to get people not to pay war taxes. And I know Kathy Kelly and a lot of her bunch are war tax resistors.
I say war tax refuser. I refuse to pay. I haven't paid a dime of federal income tax since 1980. I can't and I won't. The IRS is like my spiritual director.
Well, I say resistance just because our network is called Newtrack. National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee.org.
Thank you, David. Maybe just to add, you could go to the NWTRCC Newtrack website, and there get practical guides for war tax refusal, or go to the War Resistors League and get a manual. Don't dive into that pool if there's no water. David and I can tell you, you really have to be serious and know you're never, ever, 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 ever gonna pay. I mean, I would seriously say that I could imagine losing limbs of my body before I could imagine ever paying a dime to the war criminals that have wreaked so much carnage and havoc and murder of children. I'll never, ever, if the mafia could come to my door, I'd give money to the mafia sooner.
Do go to that website because there are stages, there's graduations of this. Me, I stopped firing, but there's other things to be done to protest, and you don't have to wait till the crowd gathers to do it. You'll be scared 2 days before April 15th, but on the 15th you feel wonderful.
David,
So there was a question about these groups, and there is a coalition of groups like Code Pink and Kathy's group, and the larger the groups like Move On, the telephone company Credo, and we work together a lot when we manage to do things like get 300,000 people to call to say we want negotiations with Iran. That's because we're all working together. One group is providing the free 800 number, one group is tracking the responses, one group is telling us which offices to call. So there is a lot of coordination happening. But I think it's really important to recognize that what we have to build up is the local groups. And so I want to take a moment now for anyone else to speak about what is happening locally, who is doing things around trying to put pressure on local officials or other kind of work that might be happening. Is there anybody here who want to speak to that?
Diane?
I'll speak to that. I'm with the Birmingham Peace Project, and our website is the top thing in all capitals here. I also put some flyers down on the table with the other literature, so we would welcome anybody joining us. We came into existence during the run-up to the Iraq War. We're still around, and we produced a lot of rallies, and we are also now producing educational activities. We produced a Palestinian information sort of a forum a few months ago called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Palestine But Were Afraid to Ask, and we did that here at UAB. Some of these folks were there, and we also had a lot of folks that didn't feel we should be there, and we had a very lively discussion following that. And then On a local issue, we recently worked with the Metropolitan Diversity Coalition on the annual MLK Unity Walk, where we just raised a lot of food, all kinds of foods for folks here in town. The food banks are empty after Christmas, and so we try to sort of balance it out between international issues and local issues. I think David mentioned we'll have a meeting this Saturday. You can find the time and the place here on our website. We would love to have you join us. Thank
Put the
you.
website up? Oh, that is.
Yes, the top thing there.
And can I mention just two campaigns that we're working on if anybody's interested? Because Omar gave us that really just horrendous story about Palestine. I wanted to mention the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions campaign known as BDS. For those of you who haven't heard of it, you might want to just look it up, BDS campaign, or bds.org. You can find information. And this is a way to use our dollars to not purchase products that are made particularly in settlements, for example. And a campaign that my group, Code Pink, recently started is one that looks at a real estate company that you might see on houses that are for sale. It's called Remax. You ever see they've got that hot air balloon outside? It is an international company based in the United States, and the Remax Israel franchise is selling homes in the Israeli settlements. Those settlements have been deemed illegal, and it should be illegal for a U.S. company to profit from the sale of settlement homes. And so if anybody's interested, we're doing simple things like going to the Remax offices, taking them a letter, explaining to the local people what their company is involved in, and asking them to convey our concerns to the national headquarters. A very, very simple thing that people could do here. And another campaign, is there anybody interested in the Remax campaign? So maybe a couple of you, if we have a chance, we could talk afterwards. And then another one I wanted to mention, Kathy brought up the issue about police brutality. There is a lot of effort now to connect the issues of militarism overseas to militarism here at home, with local communities, city councils, and mayors passing resolutions saying we don't want our police forces to be militarized. We don't want these MRAP tanks. We don't want grenade launchers. We don't want drones. We don't want these things in our community. And we are taking that to the national level when the mayor's conference comes together, but meanwhile getting these things passed at the local level. So if anybody's interested in a campaign to try to get either your city council or mayor, either Birmingham or smaller cities around here, please contact me or go to our website, which we can put up, codepink.org, and there's more information about this campaign.
Okay, here, and then here, and then I actually have a question.
Is that me?
Yes, that is you.
Yeah, first of all, originally I was going to fight the group for not singling out one country to boycott or one country to discriminate against. And unfortunately, I can't do that. And I feel it's duplicitous to do that when there's other countries as well, such as Iran or Cuba, which we're praising for moving toward having relations with, and to single out one country, especially towards the end of the program, I think is inappropriate, though I sort of expected it. Thank you for letting me speak. Also, I want to thank our military, though I don't agree with everything they do, for their service that they do to our country and our police.
Don't feel an obligation.
On the 16th, we had the first meeting of the sentencing project in Birmingham, and there'll be another one on the 27th. As you all know, the prisons are just full of mostly young men of color for nonviolent crimes. And for further information, you can call my number, 871-0267. That would be the easiest thing. And I'll email you more information.
All right, just, if you would, I know this is a kind of
Go for
leading
it,
question.
Dave.
It's not kind of, this is a leading question. But if you could comment on the fact that people like Cheney and Rumsfeld have not been indicted, and the United States is doing its best to incarcerate whistleblowers. And Alex, go ahead.
Well, we're mentioning movements here in Birmingham. I represent 38 people who started a school 7 years ago in Ensley, 35218, where no one goes to college, statistically. And this group is dedicated to working with 14 through 18-year-olds whose families make less than $30,000. What we've done is we've actually influenced corporations, the big corporations, to change their paradigm about how they see inner city schools and youth. And these corporations, 99 of them, hire our students in entry-level jobs once a week. They go to school 4 days a week, and after 8 years, 100% of our students, including 10% who comes to us at a 6th grade level, are going to college. This year, all 42 graduates went to college. UAB hires 18 of them. So it's another movement here in Birmingham that's seeking to break the cycle. It's called Holy Family Cristo Rey.
So, thank you. I would like to just go on record as saying that I and the group I represent, Voices for Creative Nonviolence, formerly Voices in the Wilderness, wish to always go on record as being against the development, sale, storage, or use of any weapons, including weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, biological, chemical weapons, economic weaponry of any country, anywhere in the world, or any non-state entities as well. I believe in pacifism, and so I'm sorry if we've singled out a particular place. I suppose if you spread the peanut butter too thin, the bread rips. And any one of us can only be responsible for a very limited, really, amount of energy to try to address wrongs that go on in the world today. There's no shortage of such wrongs. If anything, the message I would most like to leave with this group, and again, thankful for the diversity represented here, is that we are all part of one another. I love the patriot Thomas Paine, who said, "My country is the world. My religion is to do good." And, well, I guess I'll just be honest. I don't want to see anybody to go to prison, not even Jamie, not even nobody. I want to jackhammer. I want to take down every wall of every prison, anywhere. No prisons. What possible good do they do? I think for some people that really have to be removed. Well, no, that's not what I mean. It's not what I mean. What I want to say is that if there are some people who should be removed from other people who would be in danger because of the proclivity of some people to harm another person, that we could work with. But that doesn't mean that there's something redeeming or worthwhile in taking away every other possible freedom of a human being and dismantling the dignity of a human being. So I want to go on record also as saying that I oppose imprisonment and torture and punishment as a means to solve problems. I do want to see Cheney and Rumsfeld and heads of state all around the world who've engaged in murder and violence and cheating and bribery and fraud. I'd like to see them rehabilitated. But I also think that sometimes when I'm so very, very adept at pointing the finger, as our friend has pointed out, I should point it back to myself. Because when I put my foot out of bed in the morning, to what extent am I trying to live more simply and cut back on my levels of consumption? I who am about to fly back up to New York tomorrow. To what extent am I trying to share resources more radically? To what extent am I trying to be of service rather than dominance? So I think it's on all of us to keep on trying to create that better world we want to live in.
So to address the gentleman there, I'm not sure where you get that we're singling out a country because we've talked about a lot of countries that our tax dollars should not be going to. The number one recipient happens to be Israel. Number two recipient is Egypt, and I am totally opposed to the Egyptian regime.
You did not call to boycott Egyptian products.
Well, we don't have a lot of products
But
that.
they're ridiculous.
Yes, and actually, we've been looking into
Right, I
trying
thought
to
she was
build up.
directing towards me, I'm sorry. She was talking to
Yeah,
you.
no, it's okay, we're having a dialogue here. I think the reason why there is this movement around Israel is because there are hundreds of groups in Israel, Palestinian and Israelis, who have started this campaign and asked us to join. That's really the criteria for joining a boycott campaign is, are the people in the country the ones who are calling for
It's
this?
just discriminatory to single out one country.
No, but we're not, because we're doing so many things around other countries, for example.
But you're not calling for a boycott at this time.
Because maybe that doesn't make sense in other cases. For example,
It would, but
around Saudi Arabia, there aren't a lot of products. In fact, dates are the only ones we've been able to find, and the Saudis don't really care if we buy their dates. It's the oil there, and that has to be a huge campaign, which we have actually tried very
There's a lot of countries, there's
unsuccessfully
China
to do.
that has horrible human rights records. I mean, there's numerous countries, we could go along the
Yes,
list
but
of-
but I
there's probably
started,
90
what are the
countries
ones,
that fall
if
in
you
the
let me
list.
finish, I started, what are the ones where my tax dollar is going to support?
All these countries.
And the number one tax recipient is Israel, the number two is Egypt. So we go down the line in terms of priority of where our tax dollars supporting repressive governments.
All right, anything else? Well, okay, this will be the last, anyone else before here? This will be the last one, I guess, then. Yeah.
I'm a little nervous. And I want to thank you for, speaking so eloquently. What you said in particular struck a chord with me. It said you put on the clothes of other countries that,
Well, we wore the orange jumpsuits in the black places and then Guantanamo because we want, particularly Guantanamo, but we do want to make the connection between the people who are in the DC lockup who wear the same orange jumpsuit.
it reminded me of something I did in college. I took a class on the Holocaust, and it was, I don't know, it was really hard to deal with. I grew up in the Midwest, in a small farming community, 1,200 people. And there's bigger neighborhoods than that here, right? And I read this book called Night.
Right, here, like so.
Right. And as part of my project for the class, as I was reading, I noticed how he was robbed of his identity, and all those with him were robbed of their identity and put into camp, right? So I shook my head, and which was really hard because I'm not gray, but brown hair. And, it was longer, and it was really, a definite sign of my identity, right? And to be gone, and then to put on some drab clothes and present, it helped me to identify. Obviously, I wasn't tortured and, saw my family killed, but it was what I could do to walk in someone else's shoes. You asked what people are doing in Alabama. And what I've been doing, my wife is an attorney here, and we're an interracial couple, international couple, and she's been sent out to distant counties in the state, and I like to travel with her because I want to protect her. I have a job where I work as a carpenter, so I just work by myself and I can make my own hours and arrange things with customers to do that, right? So what I've been doing as a Christian is when we travel to these counties and through other counties, I've been praying for the people of those counties. And I've been praying for, because we travel to the county seat, I've been praying for that governor. And because we're at the hub where justice should be perfected and often isn't, is my fervent prayer that it will be here in our state. Thank you.
Any last
Well, I wouldn't exactly be the welcome wagon in Chicago from January 22nd until April 23rd, because I think I'll be elsewhere, I don't know where. But if any of you ever were to come through Chicago, you'd be very welcome to come and visit. We just have a second floor apartment called Voices for Creative Nonviolence. If you find yourself in a very down mood someday, just in the dumps, in the doldrums, please think about going to this website, ourjourneytosmile.com. It's the website of the Afghan Peace Volunteers. And they're the ones who entrust to me these blue stars. They say, there's one blue sky above us, and they make these stars. They've also made 3,000 duvets to distribute free of charge for women and children and people that are living in refugee camps. And they're very, very sure that blood will not wash away blood. They're trying to live together inter-ethnically, Hazara, Tajik, Pashto, and they're risking their lives to do so. But they make all these 3-minute videos that are very charming. I guarantee you, you watch a couple of those and you'll feel better. So I'm sort of charged by them to kind of try to raise their voice that says that they really want to live in a world that's border-free. And I'll be sure to tell them that Eileen wore their scarf to the event today, and who could model it better than her own Eileen here? Thank you.
So I got a chance during the day to go to the museum here and was profoundly moved by it, seeing the way things were in the 1800s and the kind of nonviolent struggle that was waged, and how this city here was considered the most segregated large city in the United States, and the ways that people stood up to bullies and oppressors and violence, and did it in the most fantastic, nonviolent way that has given us this rich tradition in this country, just struck me as so profoundly beautiful. Understanding that we still have so many problems. We talked about the sentencing project, we talked about racial divisions, police brutality, things that continue to plague us today, but we have come very far. And I would love to see that same spirit of nonviolence be something that we can do globally, that we could link up with people around the world who are so desperate to see an end to war on terror, violence, fear, living afraid of each other, the divisions that keep us apart, the fear that keeps us, except for people like Kathy and you, giving our money over to this war machine. Wouldn't it be beautiful to create that global movement for nonviolence? When I think of what's happening in Syria, I think, wouldn't it be beautiful to link arms, thousands of us from around the world, and just march across that border of Turkey into Syria and demand that everybody stop the violence? And so my hope is that one day we can build something like that. And especially for you younger people here, keep it as a goal in mind that's not impossible. And when you walk through that museum and when you see how this country has changed, hopefully it will give some of you folks inspiration for building on that and showing people around the world that there are other ways that we as global citizens can force our leaders to lead us into a nonviolent world.